Welcome to Discograffiti, and the second in an ongoing Thursday-based series of episodes that we're calling after the 1980s television series that adopt the same premise. The very
special episode.
How come it took me a year to get to that point?
I jumped in pretty early.
I appreciate that.
We're not great. We're not great at saying things at the same time.
The only problem with having a podcast where you're not good at saying things is the fact that you're not good at saying
Well, we're good at saying things, just not simultaneous things.
Right. That's good, because that's not the proper way.
Luckily, that's mostly not what podcasting is.
Yeah. In our case, very precious.
We'd be in big trouble if it was like synchronized podcasting. Yes. You had to say the same thing at the same time.
Like that synchronized dancing, swimming sketch that Martin Short did.
It would be a lot like that. So our first very special episode was an interview with Kevin Whelan of The Runs and Eon Station.
That's right.
Kind enough to come and chat with us. And then, we've got a few more of these. We did this one a little while ago, and there was so much in it that it took us a while to get through it and get it all.
Also, back at the inception of the show, when we started, Joe, I think it was early November, I believe November 1st, when we debuted. So when we taped the interview with John, it went on for hours. I mean, and very, very little of it was cutting room floor material. So what we decided to do was, you know what? Because we were always planning on having multiple strands of content, including, a massive run of stuff on Patreon. We tons of different show ideas that we're, currently assembling. And so we were going to hold off because there were plenty of applications for John's stuff. But finally, we were like, we got to put something out.
Yeah, so this is a portion of that interview where he's mostly talking about music. This is mostly his experience, like shows he's seen and
his relationship with music over the years. Obviously, as the director of movies like the Blues Brothers and Animal House, which had an incredible soundtrack, he had a lot to say about how film and music interacted.
If you've never heard him talk, he's quite a raconteur.
He is.
He's the raconteurist of raconteurs.
The ultimate, the greatest, a beautiful person, a dear friend, and
a super fun interview that we'll hope you will enjoy.
This is the first part of that interview. This is Discograffiti presents a very special episode, John Landis, A Conversation, Part 1. Enjoy. Our guest today is known for his groundbreaking work in multiple genres, including comedy, horror, and long-form video. He's directed about 25 films, including a 10-year streak that almost nobody in film history has equaled, in my objective opinion. His work includes Animal House, The Blues Brothers, Michael Jackson's Thriller video, Coming to America, and Into the Night. I love him, as I'm quite sure you will too. Ladies and gentlemen, John Levitsky, a.k.a. John Landis.
Now you have to change that.
What?
I was never John Levitsky.
What the hell's that then? I thought that was your goddamn name when you were born.
No.
What's John Levitsky?
There is no John Levitsky.
Tell me about the what is John Levitsky?
Levitsky was my great-great-grandparents' name.
Okay. All right.
But my grandfather changed it. No, my great-grandfather changed it so that my grandfather could get into law school. You needed a Goyish name to get in. There was a Jew quota at the time. No, so that's the truth.
You were actually, there's a bunch of stuff that a lot of people who know your work or know you know very well about you, which is that you are a Chicago guy, born in Chicago, but at 4 months old, you went out to L.A. With your dad, Marshall, your mom, Shirley. Is that correct? Or was your dad?
I was actually, I know I was not, I was under one. Okay. But I don't know. I couldn't vouch for 4 months.
Okay, now your mom, you made her a even more mythological than you, because a lot of people don't know that joke in Airplane, which is truly a legendary joke, was sort of a gift to your mom, was it not? You want to tell us about that?
It was not a gift to my mom. It's just my mother's name was Shirley. And we always would say, that whole Shirley gag in Airplane is something we did with my mother forever. In fact, years later when she broke her hip, and she walked with a walker, we would say, "Here she comes, slowly but surely."
So just to rewind for a second before we delve into every single detail about your existence thus far, you and I
should clarify, I didn't make Airplane. That was made by Jerry David and Jim.
Right, but it is one of the most famous jokes from the movie and most quoted, very possibly. So, full disclosure, you and I know each other. We met and actually started talking in 2003. I reached out to you because the film I was making at the time, Zombie Honeymoon, I had a feeling that you would respond to it. And you were, I got to say, you were a true mensch. I mean, you didn't have to take, I faxed a letter to your manager. You didn't have to call me. You called me the next day.
To my lawyer. I've
never
had a manager.
Whomever it was.
This is why they called me mythological.
So you helped me along the way. You got me my first distribution offer through Blue Underground and Bill Lustig. Then you and I actually went to Italy to the Torino Film Festival, and you really helped me out along the way. Plus, just having you as a mentor figure along the way. When the chips were down, and filmmaking is certainly an up and down process, it really helped me through. Thank you. And moving right along now, you're now in L.A., okay? You see Seventh Voyage of Sinbad. This is the big inspiration for you. You decide to become a filmmaker. The first step along the way is becoming a mail boy at 20th Century Fox. Is that correct?
I just wanted to be near production, to get anywhere near making movies. And the only job I could get was a mail boy at Fox.
So did you see this as your way in, or you just kind of wanted to be on the periphery, so to speak?
There's no way in. I mean, what's interesting is when people talk about my career, it always sounds like the military. You always hear he worked his way up. There's no working your way up.
No, you zigzagged all over the place.
No, but it doesn't work like that. I mean, how do you become a director? Well, somehow there's the money for you to direct. Mm-hmm. I mean, it's not an easy, there's no steps. Like if you wanted to be a plumber, you know that you go and you learn
a trade.
Trade, mm-hmm. Right. If you want to be a doctor, you learn the trade. If you want to be a filmmaker, there is no right or wrong way to learn the skills or the craft.
I learned by fucking up so bad.
Well, that's how people learn.
That's a way.
Yeah, that's how people really learn bad. Everything.
No, I mean, I like you, I butted heads with schools. So I was suspended from college and just went and made a feature called Jesus 2, partially financed with bar mitzvah money, and also partially financed by $40,000 on credit cards. And we had to shut down production in the middle. I know what not to do. You know what I mean? But so during this time,
I just wanted to be near actual production to learn everything I could. And over the years, you can't do what I did now, really, because there was production. I went to Europe on a movie, and I was able to. There was what was called the spaghetti boom in Spain at the time.
Before we get there.
Well, no, I was just saying I was able to get on all kinds of movies: American, British, French, Spanish, German, Italian. I have done every job on a film except hair. And that's how I, sort of learned the craft.
That's incredible to me because you are very well coiffed. So
kind of the same kind of deal working in music. It's like if you want to get into making records, hang out around recording studios, hang out around people who make records. You pick things up along the way.
Was that the inspiration to drop out of high school? I know what I want to do. It's just time to start doing it. And looking back, do you still feel the same way about that decision?
Well, I'm the classic bad example because I'm sure that the diagnosis didn't exist then, but I'm sure I was ADHD. I used to get bizarre grades. I would get A's in history and A's in English and F's in math. I still am dreadful at anything that involves math. So one of the things about music that fascinates me is when I worked with film composers is when I really realized, wait a minute, music is math.
Yeah, they're very closely related.
Yeah, we're like, holy shit. No wonder I'm not a musician. But interestingly enough, I've been told by a lot of amazing people that I'm privileged to have worked with Jerry Goldsmith, Elmer Bernstein, Peter Bernstein. I'm trying to think. Nile Rodgers, so many great composers. And they've all told me that I have perfect rhythm. And I think, and I don't know what that is, but what's interesting about that is it does help because even rhythm is math.
Well, rhythm is I feel like that's an innate quality. People are either inherently funky or not. There's nothing.
I don't know how funky I am.
Don't you think
nothing you can really do about it if you don't have good rhythm?
Well, it helps you with film music
and editing. Editing is math.
Well,
I mean, if you can't strip away what you're seeing and just feel the organic underlying rhythm of the scene, then you're...
Yes, but I wouldn't say editing is math.
You're 14 years old, okay? And you go to this show called The Tammy Show.
Oh, okay.
All right, so there's a famous movie, The Tammy Show, and you're in the goddamn movie. So...
Well, no. I'm in the audience. You see.
You're in the movie, aren't you not?
You can see me if you know where to look, but it doesn't matter. I'm just one other little screaming kid. But the thing about The Tammy Show was I went to Emerson Junior High, which was L.A. public school. Right behind the Mormon Temple is Emerson, still there. And because of the area it was in, which includes Bel Air and Westwood, a lot of industry kids were there. It was a very strange school because we had black kids bussed in from Watts. We had mostly white. It was about 45% white, about 20% black, and 20% Hispanic. It was actually a good mix of kids.
Who were you most excited to see?
I wasn't excited to see them then, but like in my class was David Cassidy, and Bonnie Raitt was the grade ahead of me. My sisters, who also went to Emerson, they went on to uni, the high school. I did not. But my sister was in the same class with Natalie Cole and Liza Minnelli. I remember I never met her or saw her, but my mother being so excited when Judy Garland came to pick up Liza and spent the night. You're talking about she was probably 14, Mm-hmm. But my mother was like, Judy Garland's outside.
So when you went to the show, do you remember?
Well, I was going to say there were all these really talented kids in my school. Somebody in Emerson, I've forgotten who, but their dad was involved in producing the Tammy Show, which was Teenage America Music International. And it was shot, they came up with some silly word for it, but it was shot.
It was like something vision.
Vision.
Something like Electrovision.
It was shot to be projected in theaters. And something went wrong, and they ended up having 16-millimeter cameras, too, to make, kinescopes if they had to. But all I know is they did shoot the show, and it's directed by the same guy who directed the famous Elvis special.
Mm-hmm.
So
he's a nice guy. But anyway.
Do you remember the show itself?
Very well.
Who do you remember most?
What I remember most was James Brown.
Right.
But also what I remember was the idea that you had, Marvin Gaye, Chuck Berry, the Beach Boys, Jan and Dean, Diana Ross, and the Supremes. You had
and the Stones, legendarily,
the Rolling Stones,
and shakily.
Well, I'm trying to think. It was an amazing.
Jan and Dean were on there.
Jan and Dean were the host. You had
Leslie Gore.
Well, that was the point of all those acts. The biggest star was Leslie Gore.
Yeah, she was hot. She was hot right at that time.
She was
that
the
time, really?
biggest star. And in fact, if you look at the Tammy Show, you see her singing and all those people behind her dancing, and she was the number one star, which was kind of amazing.
I wonder if our friend Don Randy was in the band on that show, because
very
the
well
band
could have
is all Wrecking Crew. It's Hal
the
Blaine.
Wrecking Crew.
It's Hal Blaine
and you know
Tommy
who
Tedesco.
one of the Go-Go Girls is Tony Basil, and one of the Go-Go Girls is Terry Garr.
Oh, man.
Nice, nice.
See,
But
you
I
gotta
was-
love this town.
I
It's
was
so good.
younger than them, but the show was very exciting. They did it twice. So one audience, they cut between shows, but one audience is like the 7th and 8th grade, and one audience is like the 8th and 9th grade.
I hadn't seen it in a while, and I watched some of it last night. And,
It's the best footage of James Brown performing
yeah,
live.
that's amazing.
It's
the Chuck,
great,
the
yeah.
Chuck Berry footage is pretty great.
Yeah.
It's pretty like
The
raw.
Stone
like-
stuff is pretty limp. I mean, it's
It sounded
actually
pretty good to me.
Well, you could
just
tell
think
that
of-
story.
I mean, after watching James Brown,
That's
it's
the
just funny.
story.
Yeah.
Mick Jagger tells a funny story about it, but he insisted that they be the ending act, the closing act. And James Brown said, "Excuse me, I'm the closing act." So they had the director, I can't think of his name, I'm embarrassed, but he called them all together and he said, "Look, you put me in this weird position. You're both demanding to be the closing act." And James famously looked at Mick Jagger and said, "Oh, this is okay. Let him be the closing act." And then James comes out and just blows
Murders
the
it. It's-
roof
yeah,
off.
yeah.
And then after James Brown, the Rolling Stones. Now, they were big stars because of Ed Sullivan. We knew who they were. But it was like hoodie, skinny white boys. You know, it was like...
I'm curious, John. You actually saw the Beatles at an early show. Is that correct?
I don't know if it was early, not in their career, but...
It was actually kind of late for them. It was
Yeah.
the only tour
Yeah,
for
actually,
another-
it was toward the end of their.
Yeah.
But did the Beatles, were you just like everyone else? Were you? Did you see that Ed Sullivan show? Did they impact you at all?
Of course. The Beatles were. My mother made me puppets of the Beatles. I used to do puppet shows, and I had these paper mache heads and cloth bodies and black yarn, so that when they went ooh, you could shake their heads back and forth in their hair. But
Did you hear anything at that show? Can you actually hear them play?
interestingly enough, no. And what was amazing?
Who did you go with your mom? Was Shirley?
No. I went to school with Peter Bernstein, and Peter's father was Elmer Bernstein, the great
Of course.
Hollywood composer. And Elmer took us, meaning his son, Peter, and his other son, Greg, and me. And I'm not sure if Andy Gold was with us or not, but I've forgotten. But I do know.
And Andy Gold, of course, Linda Ronstadt's side person during all the greatest years in the 70s. And Thank You for Being a Friend.
Yeah,
and
Andrew
Lonely
had his
Boy.
own hits.
Andrew was a pretty talented guy. You came up with him. So
I didn't come up with them. I went to 9th and 10th grade. Well, I went to
Okay.
9th and 9th grade with him, I should say, I guess.
So you're at the show.
So
what,
it took
what do you remember?
And we had, or Elmer had box seats. And what I remember at the Hollywood Bowl, it's gone now, but there used to be a reflecting pond in front at the foot of the stage. It was a fairly large reflecting pond. It was quite beautiful when there was ballet or orchestra because it would have a mirror image. But they took that out 30 years ago, 20. But it was there then, so it took up a lot of boxes. And it was space. So we were right on the other side of the reflect. We had very good seats, the box seats, and we brought food. What I remember the most about that concert was the screaming.
Yeah, that's what everybody says.
Yeah.
Just screaming.
You hear maybe like the first couple bars, and then once people recognize what the song was, that it's all over.
They ran out on stage. They said a few words like hello, and from then on it was screaming. And people don't realize that there weren't stadium speakers then. When they played venues, they were halls. Or theaters, proper theaters. But when you're playing the Hollywood Bowl, there were for rock and roll, there were no stadium speakers. Which,
there were no stacks like they have now.
Exactly.
Right.
So, I saw many shows where if you were too far away, you couldn't hear it at all.
Right.
But in terms of the Beatles, the hysteria, I was 15. I remember that. It was the summer I turned 15, I guess. But the screaming was so intense.
Well, they invented a special amp for the Beatles, the Super Beatle Vox amp, which I think was 50 watts. That was like the
Really?
loudest amp. Like you're supposed to play a 10,000 seat theater, and they're supposed to hear your 50-watt amp.
So just to have context, a street busker would be playing how many watts out of their amp?
10 watts.
Okay, so 5 times louder than a street busker.
I mean, a 50-watt amp's pretty loud, but still,
Yeah.
you know,
It was very exciting.
And that show later came out as the Capitol LP from '77. That very show, right?
That's what they say. I mean, we always thought so, and we were excited because then you could hear them.
they could still play pretty good, despite there was no way they could have been able to hear themselves.
I've heard the show from Candlestick Park. There's obviously a very loud, the very last one in August of '66, obviously very loud screaming. But then the music underneath, especially Nowhere Man, like I just really
Well, but you're
recall-
listening to, you were there? Or
No,
you,
God, no.
You
I
heard a
was
recording.
-6. Yeah.
Well, recordings, you got to remember, the vocals are up front. It's very different
But they're
than
not
hearing it.
hearing anything.
Yeah,
Oh,
they're
they
So
can
the
hardly
fact,
hear
foldback
anything.
the
speakers
fact that
and
it's
then-
actually cohering under all this blanket of madness is insane.
Well, they played, how many gigs did they play?
Right.
The
Yeah,
Beatles?
that's the thing nobody does anymore. You know, they had all those years playing, 4 sets a night until 4 a.m. for
Yeah,
years.
drunk on Jack and hopped up on meth, right?
It's just a lot of performing, regardless of drugs. It's just that it's why, the secret of Hollywood? People don't really understand this, but why are American movies from the 20s to the 70s so fucking remarkable? And one of the main reasons is vaudeville. Is you had Chautauqua, you had Tent, you had Showboat, but then you had vaudeville and legit theater. But vaudeville, how many thousand theaters were in the country, and how many people were, W.C. Fields was performing in vaudeville for 30 years, 40 years before he made a movie. And when you see that, the talent and just the skills of the performers that the movie studios had to pull from, and you look at movies like, if it's not Broadway, it's vaudeville. And if you look at movies like The Wizard of Oz, which I think is one of the great films, period, the entire cast, even Judy Garland, the Gum Sisters, they're all vaudevillians,
Right.
which means they've all been on stage for years. And it's why they're so damn good. It's this talent pool that's so deep.
I think it's the same thing with music. Like you see a clip of someone like Joni Mitchell or someone playing, and you can't imagine walking into a coffee house and seeing somebody do that now.
No.
Your brain would explode.
I saw.
It wouldn't,
I know one. I saw Bob Dylan with just him and a guitar at the Rose Cafe on Rose and the Boardwalk in Venice in the '60s.
Really? Wow.
I forgot. Yeah, I saw that, and it was just him performing.
But so just to bring it back to the Beatles, I'm curious, because you and I have never spoken about this. Did they have any kind of, I know right around that time, and if you want, we can cut this out. Right around that time, you dropped out of high school, correct? Was it
That year?
That year. So
No, I dropped out. I lied. I dropped out in '66.
66. So we'll forget about that as far as how that relates to the Beatles. But I'm curious, in what way, if any, did they impact you creatively?
Well, first of all, I don't know. When people talk about their influences, they're really not candid unless they say everybody, everything, good and bad. And then there's some individuals who maybe had a bigger impact on you. What's fascinating about the Beatles that I was really unaware of at the time was how they evolved. Just recently, Paul McCartney kind of snarkily referred to the Rolling Stones as a rhythm and blues cover band. But the evolution of the Beatles is amazing.
Yeah.
It's, from covering Chuck Berry tunes and stuff to what they evolved into is amazing. And as a group and as a phenomenon, culturally, there's hardly been anything with that kind of impact. It's like Stravinsky's Firebird. It was literally riots. And their impact on international culture was and I was perfect. I was 15. I was right there for it. I saw them when were they on Ed Sullivan the first?
64.
63.
63. So I was 13.
No, Ed Sullivan was 64.
Whatever. It
64?
doesn't matter.
Okay. Yeah, February 64, yeah.
You guys are insane. Anyway, the thing is, you're like,
Welcome
what?
to Discography.
It's like baseball fans.
I'm one of those too.
Are you? Because you know what? You know what it is? It's just statistics. I mean, it's all numbers. Anyway, am I wrong?
No, you're correct.
Thank you. Anyway, the exciting story I'm telling you is the Beatles. I think it was the influence of Peter Bernstein and Andy Gold, who were both musicians and players, and composers and singers, but they had a much more sophisticated understanding of the Beatles than I did. I mean, because Andy, for instance, I remember when Revolver came out, listening to the record at school and Andy breaking it down, how amazingly new or different or this, or listen to this and what they're doing here. I also remember Andy doing that with the Beach Boys. Mm-hmm. When I thought of the Beach Boys, this before Good Vibration.
And you can hear in Andy's stuff the obvious influence of both bands.
Well, I thought the Beach Boys were,
they're my favorite.
A beach band. I saw them many times playing on the beach.
I have a Beach Boys tattoo, which
I don't want to see it. Thank you.
It's on my genitals.
It's on your genitals? Then I would like to see it.
But, okay, so here's the amazing thing to me, okay? You go to the show, it's overwhelming, you can barely hear them, it's a cultural
and then it was
phenomenon.
A nightmare getting to your car and out of there. It was
Still
just an experience.
Yeah.
The only time I've seen that kind of hysteria was when Michael Jackson took Deborah and baby Rachel, my daughter, who's now in her late 30s, he took us to Disney World right after we made Thriller. And I had an experience like that where it was like being with Michael at that moment.
He just went to regular Disney World, just Michael Jackson.
Well, yes, but it wasn't, I don't know if you know this, but Disney World, they built it, it's all swamp.
Right, I'm from Florida, so I know
they
it well.
built the whole thing, the entire place is built underneath it.
Yeah, it's like below sea level, kind of.
Yeah, it's all concrete and these huge tunnels and passageways, and it's very science fiction looking, and they drive around in golf carts, and so you can be anywhere in any of the parks from underground. That's why you don't see, it's very kind of brilliant, and all the trash and everything it's underground. And it isn't really, it's actually built up, the tallest mountain.
So he's doing the subterranean.
So that's how Michael got around Disney World. He's
not just like standing in line for Pirates of the Caribbean.
Did you gain entry into those underground tunnels?
Oh, sure. I'll tell you the story, because it's absolutely true story. I have a photograph. But it's the only time in my life, I don't know how the Beatles, I don't know how these rock groups or Elvis or Sinatra survive this stuff. I mean, obviously, it tends to make people insane.
Yeah, not well, is how they say.
Well, it's a crazy making thing. But I was with Mike, and Disney wanted us to get their photographer to take a picture of us, Michael and me, and Mickey Mouse. This is when Thriller was on TV. The video was a big deal. So we go, underground, and we're taken in a golf cart, and we came up. Where the hell was it? It was in Fantasyland. So we were like, the castle's back there. And it was like a lawn. And around the lawn, not like the size of this room, not that big, around the lawn was a little rope with stanchions, like in a bank. Those lines, that was invented at Disneyland, that way of thing. Anyway, that was it. That was our protection. There was a park security guy and Michael's security guy, who was named Bill Bray, who was an old guy who was an ex-LAPD cop, and he was security. Right. I don't know how much security.
You were pretty fucking recognizable at that time, too. I mean, were people coming up to you as well?
But you're standing next to Michael Jackson.
It was Michael Jackson.
Did he suck the celebrity
wait
out
a minute.
of you?
That's like the Apostle Paul. It's like, hey, I'm here, too. But this... the story is, we appear, there's a photographer waiting. He had one of those old flash cameras like King Kong, like in the movies, And
with that noise?
We stand up, and there are people in the park. It's open. And some people, you hear, hey, look, scream, in the distance, scream. And within 2 minutes, there were thousands of people around us. And when I say thousands, I mean as far as you could see. I mean, it was like, I thought, uh-oh. And they were hysterical. I mean, people would see Mike, and it was like seeing Jesus. There's thousands of people going crazy with this little stanchions between us. The security guy, the Disney security guy, is standing in his suit, with his walkie-talkie, and you see him going, help, send help, And Mickey is a guy in a costume. So there's Mickey Mouse and Michael and me, and the man snapping pictures. And the photographer said, I'm a little concerned about crowd control. And just then, magically, and I couldn't tell you where it came from, a black Cadillac limousine appears. The security guy grabs Michael, throws him in the back, grabs Mickey, throws him in the back, and I'm thinking, I see my input. Grabs me, throws me in the back. The photographer jumps in the front. There's a driver. They slam the doors, and the chains break, and it was like a dam bursting. The crowd, like surf, came crashing down upon the car, like that. Faces pushed to get everyone hysterical. Mickey is like, holy shit! We're just
the poor guy with the giant Mickey head.
We are terrified. When I say we, Mickey, the photographer, me, and the driver. Michael, calm, cool as a cucumber, saying, hi, hello.
Yeah, just another day.
And people are mushed against the glass, and I think people are going to get hurt. And the guy starts the car and inches forward slowly. It took us like 20 minutes to just get away from the crowd. And then more security came. It was terrifying.
I can't fucking believe they saved Mickey before they saved you. I can't even get past that.
Well,
point
he
of
was
the
a
story.
corporate asset. The one time in my life that I was speechless, that I was just gobsmacked, because it was so unexpected and so out of context, was we were shooting Thriller in Vernon by a big meatpacking plant. There was an alley, and at that time it was kind of a very dangerous neighborhood. It was gang.
It ain't great now.
Oh well,
yeah.
It was gang
Can attest to
related,
that.
and we had a heavy police presence, but to shoot that, but like 3 a.m. or something. Michael Jackson had an assistant, young girl, and she came to me and said, John, Mike, we were shooting a graveyard thing in a meatpacking plant, by the railroad tracks, and Michael would like to see you, please. And I said, well, tell him I'll be out in 10 or 15 minutes. I have to finish this. I think he wants to see you now. I said, apologize, and tell him I'll be out in 15 minutes. So 10 minutes later, I go up to this Winnebago that's parked by the railroad track, knock on the door, and you know how when you enter a Winnebago, you open the door and you step up into it? So I knock, come in. I open the door, step up, and like as I sort of turn, like right there, Michael says, John, do you know Mrs. Onassis? And it's like Jackie Kennedy, like right there. And it was so like, huh? I was just dumbstruck. I don't know. That was the one time I just.
You know what's interesting about you is that you kind of excuse yourself from being a sort of somebody who's had a profound effect on music. You kind of like move away from that a little bit. But the funny thing is, you're like a stone skipping over a pond because you hit all these. You got the Tammy Show, then you're at Monterey Pop.
I was extremely fortunate to be at Monterey
What's
Pop.
the story with Monterey Pop? Because you are the farthest fucking thing from a hippie I've ever met.
I beg your pardon. No, I was not a hippie, but I was hippie-ish. I had long hair.
Was it your idea or a girl's idea to go?
No, I went with a boy. I went with a guy.
Did you paint your face?
No.
What did you wear accoutrement-wise?
What I always wore, I wore jeans and a
blazer.
Shirt,
a blazer.
No, but I wasn't a real hippie. But most of the people there were not real hippies. The one real hippie thing I went to that was totally hippie was seeing the Mamas and the Papas at the Hollywood Bowl and that was the Summer of Love. That was 67. I remember.
That was August 18th, 1967. That was the day you saw it.
I took a girl named Kathy Zoitlin. And
Zoitlin! It sounds like a Jerry Lewis thing.
She was... Anyway, I took this girl, and it was memorable for a bunch of reasons. One, because the stench of marijuana, the wall of marijuana, like you got within a mile of the Hollywood Bowl, you were stoned, and we go, and every seat in the Hollywood Bowl, Mama Cass had paid for a baby orchid to be on it. And everyone was blowing bubbles and, incense and Hare Krishna and all this stuff. And the opening act, talk about hippie, the opening act was Scott McKenzie singing, If You're Going to San Francisco. And then came a guy that that had to be before Monterey Pop because
It was after. It was 2 months after. But the Monterey Pop movie had not come out yet. That's
okay,
really
because Jimi Hendrix came on and nobody knew who he was. And he started to play really loud the opening chords of Sgt. Pepper. Mm-hmm. And he's playing that, and the audience just went, boo. Well, first of all, they're all stoned. Second of all, it's what the fuck? They're going, what is this? And they just booed, and he played most of the song, and then he took his guitar off and just threw it high in the air and walked off, and it smashed on the stage and made noise. And I remember very well the next day in the LA Times was a review of the concert, and it said, Mr. Hendrix, who was not received favorably, threw his guitar in the air and walked off stage. I'm told normally he sets it on fire. And I remember reading that going, what? See, that's why I'm interested, because I saw him at Monterey.
Well, I was going to ask if you had seen him at Monterey Pop.
I did. So in my head, I'm confused.
And oddly, you had seen Mamas and Papas at Monterey Pop. So that was the summer of your obsession with the Mamas and the Papas.
No, I don't know, but they were great. The Mamas and the Papas come on, and Mama Cass started by saying, you people, and she scolded the audience. She said, this man's a genius, and you're going to regret this. And she was really stern. She was like wagging her finger.
She was right.
And she was
very right, yeah.
But the Monterey Pop CD, the film, I think it's Pennebaker. I forgot.
It's Pennebaker.
Pennebaker. He did a wonderful thing. He took the Jimi Hendrix set, but especially the Otis Redding set, and they're separate, their whole acts. And the Otis Redding, that for me was life change. I've seen Sinatra. I worked with Michael Jackson. I worked with David Bowie. I've worked with everybody, and I've seen a lot of great performers. Oh, that was one of the great shows I've ever seen. Period.
Okay, so that was part one of our interview with John Landis. We've got a lot more.
Man, was that a fuckload of fun? Jesus.
Yeah, there's a ton more of that. That's the tip of the iceberg of our John Landis interview.
And very, very precious little of it's actually going to wind up being just excised completely without being utilized. But one of the things that we definitely plan on doing is using we basically cover just about every movie in his entire career. And even if cursorily you were aware of the extent of his filmography, that would be an absolutely bemusing idea that we would tackle everything.
Yeah, Dave could do this show with movies too, no problem.
Yeah.
I would not be qualified to do such a show. But
Dave
that
would be great. It's kind of like
he's a filmmaker guy.
Movie graffiti, or I don't know.
Yeah,
we don't really have it's not really on format, but it's wonderful. John is an incredible interview, and because he and I are friends for 20 years, there's a different character to the interview itself.
And he's going to be making another appearance on the main Discography show.
That's right.
Talking about a particular artist.
That's right.
So
we
he'll
can't
be back
tell
for
you
that
who
too.
It is, but it does rhyme with Small McFartney. All right, so thank you so much for joining us on a very special episode Thursday. We'll see you back on Monday for the conclusion of Bob Forrest and the band, or if you're just listening out of order, just soak up the entirety of the content like a piece
Binge
of
it.
bread in a gravy bowl.
These are easily bingeable. It'll only be, you've got like a 30-something hour binge or something now. If you
That's
like
right.
all these.
That's right. You're welcome. Please support us in every single way possible. Press pause on your life and do so. Thank you so much for
Send
joining
us money directly.
Yeah.
Just send us. Just find us
right.
and Venmo us.
Yeah, just cash everything out, send it all to us, Jim Jones style. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time on Discography.